Hello, everyone, and welcome to episode 26 of the Rise of Dragons podcast. My name is Robert Blanchard, but my friends call me Bobby. And in the past year, I talked about revamping the podcast. I'm sorry, and I've basically identified what my brand is and done some work towards making an actual brand. I now own a logo that I use in my YouTube videos, and I kind of identify my brand as being silly. So it might be fair to say that my intro and outro music don't really fit my brand. But can I talk about how much I love it and how I'm never going to change it? Premiere by ANBR and The Last Hero by Vyacheslav Dragunov are just amazing pieces of music that I found on artlist.io. And man, I love that music so much. And I can't sit here and say I go back to listen to my work a whole lot, but when I do listen to my own podcast and I hear that music come on, it just makes me so happy. So yeah, that's just basically what I want to say at the top here, is that I love my music and I'm never going to change it. Well, it's not my music, but you know what I mean. Yeah, and my brand is what it is, and that's not going to change either. But I just love the music too much, and it's not going anywhere. So, I hope you guys like it, because I know I love it, and it's here to stay. And I want to say thank you once again to everyone who has continued to listen to the podcast in its absence. Over 450 downloads, which is pretty amazing, despite the fact that I haven't put out a podcast in a year. I hope everyone is enjoying this new format, because I think it just works better for me personally and for everything that I do. Hopefully you guys are finding interest in it, here or there or everywhere. We talk about my writing stuff, we talk about YouTube, and then maybe I talk about life a little bit and do shout outs and things like that. So for the writing portion of the podcast today, I kind of want to talk about titles for your book, and how you can come up with them. I say I want to talk about it, but there's no guide to coming up with a title for your book. If you really look at like the Harry Potter books, Harry Potter and the blank of the blank, the Dragonlance books, they all have themes to them, like the Time of the Twins, the Test of the Twins, Dragons of Autumn Twilight and Dragons of Spring Dawning and things like that. So they all have like similar naming patterns. And that's obviously what I wanted to do for my books. And I talked before about how the original title of The Roar of a Dragon was like the sound of a dragon roaring. And like looking back on it, I don't know why I thought that was a good title. People tried to tell me that it wasn't. I was part of a small community of writers on a website. I can't remember what the name of the website was, but it was a good website for getting feedback and things like that on titles and writing and all kinds of different stuff. But they tried to convince me that the title was not right, and they tried to get me to name it something else. And I really don't know how I settled on The Roar of a Dragon, but I remember like I changed it and I wasn't terribly fond of it at the time. But over time it grew on me, as most things that I like do. It kind of takes time for me to settle into it and consider it to be a good idea. But The Roar of a Dragon fit perfectly. So, and then I tied it into like the actual writing. If you've read the book, the last thing Aiden heard was the roar of a dragon, So, you tie it in that way. And then when it comes to books 2 and 3, I wanted the blank of a blank. And, the treachery of a weasel. Obviously, I don't think it's too much of a spoiler to say that the weasel is Norvin, Aiden's arch nemesis, and he's full of treachery. So it really wasn't difficult to come up with that title. The third book, The Cry of a Raven, has a little more mystery surrounding it, and I guess you really have to kind of read it to know why I settled on that title. And the long and the short of it is, the Raven is Narasara, the head of the Mages Council in the world of the Roar of a Dragon, and she has raven black hair, and she's introduced in book 2, but she becomes more of a presence in book 3, and toward the end she has a major part to play in the climax. And I'm not gonna spoil exactly what that was, but she, the cry of a raven, you can probably guess what she did for that title to become relevant. But you want to stick to something similar. I think it kind of makes the books easier to group together. It's easier for people to identify. And I will say that the part in the Cry of a Raven that the title is, I guess, based off of is based off of Hulk in the Avengers, the original Avengers movie. I may or may not have talked about that on a previous episode, but Nora Sara's reaction to certain events and what happens afterward, I guess, and even the line that she says, you can identify it. If you've seen the movie and you read the book, you can pretty much tell where it came from. But it's one of my favorite moments in the entire trilogy, and definitely one of those things that I was waiting a long time to write. It was definitely a rewarding moment to finally put that moment from my brain onto paper, or computer screen, as it were. Although some of my writing, a lot of my writing, did end up on paper for a long time, and then I transferred it over to computer. But I was writing old school for a long time. I was writing freehand. My laptop wasn't really working that well, so I just wrote it all in a notebook, several notebooks or whatever, and then eventually it came back on to Microsoft Word. But yeah, I guess that's really what I wanted to touch on today. I mean, not really earth-shattering stuff, but naming your book is important, and it's one of the first things that a reader will see and identify with. So, you want to pick something, obviously, that identifies with your book, but you want to pick something that's, easily identifiable and can be found in search engines and things like that. So, there's always a lot of things to consider in all aspects of writing and all aspects of creative life, but, you want to take time and pick the right title, because you can't really go back and change it once you published it. So, pick the right one that suits your book and suits your story and suits you as a writer. And, hopefully everything pans out in the end and things go your way. Obviously, a lot more factors have to work for you for that to happen, but, picking the right title is a good start. So definitely you want to start there and, and move forward. All right, on to the Bobby's World 2110 portion of the podcast. Bobby's World 2110 is my YouTube channel, so if you want to go check that out, I do a lot of Soulsborne challenge videos. Those are always Monday, 3 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. And Wednesdays, like I said last week, used to be Soulsborne Battles of the Death, but that's on hiatus right now. Now it's Your Father's Story, where I answer questions from a book that's designed to be written for your children. Basically, you answer the questions in the book for your children to read when they get older and, remember who their father was and all that kind of thing. So I made videos out of it. And then, Saturdays at 8 p.m. Eastern Standard Time is Bobby's Gaming Lounge. That's my weekly live stream. I play games and everyone comes in the chat and we have a fun old time. So we might as well start with the Gaming Lounge, which was Saturday. I played Firewatch, which was a lot of fun. I picked a story-based game that I could hopefully finish in one stream. It was a bit of a minor debacle though, because I failed to plan for my inability to play exploration games. So certain parts of the game were just taking forever, and it wasn't the game's fault at all. It was my fault for not being able to find what I was looking for and move on with my life. I even cheated a couple times and looked up things because on a live stream it's difficult because you're being watched, and you want to move the story along for the people watching, and you don't want to make them sit there forever because eventually you're going to lose them. The audience I have now is mostly like I said before, my boys and their friends, so they're not likely to go anywhere. But at the same time, people are going to be watching after, so you want to pick things up and move along. I did love the game though. I love the story. It's very amazing, and that's pretty much what I read about it. I had watched it being played in the past, like a long time ago, so I really didn't remember it that well, and I kind of remembered things that happened at the end, but I did not remember the mystery part, and I did not remember the resolution to the story. It's a great game, so I definitely suggest it if you're looking for a story based kind of rather short experience. You could pick that up and just relax and play it. There's no combat of any kind. It's nothing like that. It's exploration based story game, and it's very well put together. It's very well acted, and the art design and the graphics are amazing. So definitely worth checking out. It was a debacle for another reason as well, because the stream cut out about 3/4 of the way through the game, so I had to wait for my internet to come back and restart the stream. So that was a lot of fun. So I have invested in I've invested in quite a few things for this week's stream, so I'm definitely looking forward to it. I think my viewers are going to be in for a surprise, but I invested in an Ethernet cable that I can hook up to my router in the living room. My room is right next to the living room, but need a fairly long cord. So, yeah, hopefully that will prevent things like that from happening in the future. Although, there's no guarantee of that either. But it is what it is. But either way, Firewatch was a fun game, and I think everyone had fun watching it and participating, and it was definitely a different kind of experience. I wanted to do something a little bit different. Obviously, the Resident Evil games, 7 and 8, have been a big hit on my channel the last few weeks, and we are moving on to Resident Evil Requiem in a few weeks. I'm just getting some things in between, doing some different things. Christian and his friend Zach, who's a big fan of the channel, and shout out to him, are pushing for a GTA V Heist. So we might be doing that next week on the channel. We'll see what happens. But yeah, good times. I'm so glad I'm able to do these live streams. It took a long time to make it a reality, just time wise, and it was just difficult. But it's out now, so I look forward to it every week. And I know Kate was initially worried about the amount of time I was working at my full-time job, and then doing this at my off time. It's not enough time for like real relaxation. Like I don't think a lot of people realize how much work goes into YouTube and things like that. It's not just recording, it's editing, it's uploading, it's coming up with a title and making a thumbnail and all this stuff. There's a lot that goes into it. And but she has remarked that after my streams I seem to be very giddy and very happy, so she enjoys seeing that. So is very, very important. So I'm definitely enjoying the live streams, and they are here to stay. So I definitely looking forward to this Saturday and what we're doing, and hopefully everyone enjoys it. On Monday, the newest episode of the Bloodborne No Blood Vial run came out, even though I mistakenly referred to it as the Elden Ring No Crimson Flask run, because that was the last series I was doing, and it was just habit to say that, and I'm very tired, and it's just, I made a mistake at the beginning of the stream. What can I say? But fresh off of beating the cleric beast in the previous episode, I was exploring more of Old Yarnum and moving on to the next scene, or moving on to the next, boss area. And, it was it was pretty standard fare. I did run into a few problems, and, it's Bloodborne. I'm starting to realize that Bloodborne is going to be trickier than I thought. Elden Ring so far has been mostly a breeze in the first two volumes. Dark Souls 3 was easy for me because I played it so many times. It has nothing to do with the game being easy. It's just I'm just so familiar with everything in that game because I played it so much. Bloodborne is something I've beaten it a couple times, but I haven't played it that much. Christian, my oldest son, has played it way more than I have. So I'm starting to find that this is going to be a long haul. This is going to be a tough series, and but I'm looking forward to it. I mean, I am here for the challenges. Sekiro was a major challenge. Yeah, definitely a major challenge, but I had fun with that, so I'm definitely looking forward to Bloodborne. Looking forward to more Bloodborne. By the end of the episode, I had gotten to right before Father Gascoigne, so that next episode is probably going to be a win or bust episode, which means I'm not going to end the episode until I beat Father Gascoigne. So that's definitely going to be interesting. We're going to see what happens there. But I think this last episode of Bloodborne was a pretty good one. Definitely some funny moments and some tough moments, but hopefully that's what you're here to see. So that's what the Soulsborne challenges provide for you. So that's what we're doing on Mondays. Like I said, the next episode should be Father Gascoigne, win or bust. So that is going to be one for the books, I think. So say a prayer for me on that one, because we're going to dive right into it. I'm going to fight him until it's over. So, good luck to me. And Wednesdays, like I said, is Your Father's Story. And this past episode, I answered a bunch of questions. I've shortened the episodes significantly. When I was only doing them occasionally, they would be like a half an hour long. Now I've shortened it to like 15, 20 minutes. They're a little more bite-sized, so a little more easily digestible. I answered questions such as, what was a school event that you remember, and why do you remember it so much? And I didn't really have a have a really good answer for that. I mean, when I went to high school, I didn't really go to that many school events, and eventually didn't end up going to school much at all. Most of my school events were centered around elementary school, but I did talk about a play where I was it was based around travel agents and traveling around the world and things like that, blah blah blah. And there was a spot for two Asian travel agents, and I went for the part and I got it because I'm Asian, so it was probably the easiest part I ever got. I did come up with the idea of wearing, no, we wore kimonos at the play. But I came up with the idea of folding our arms in the kimonos. And the girl who was with me was like, "Oh, thanks a lot," whatever. But when it came time and we got up on stage, I completely forgot to put my arms in the kimono, to fold them in the kimono. So my the teacher's signaling me from the floor to do it, and like just big shock look on my face. I went ahead and did it. Got a nice giggle out of the crowd. So that was a fun time. That was probably my most unforgettable school event. Another question was, what rules or chores did your parents give you that you hated? Which prompted me to talk about how spoiled I was as a child, and I had no rules or chores. I can't really say I didn't have any rules. That's not not entirely accurate, but I definitely didn't have any chores. I was spoiled rotten. I talked about how I'm the youngest of 8 kids, but also an only child, which is can be a complicated thing to understand. No one, unless you've heard the story, it makes no sense. But people around me know what it means. So I was a bit of a miracle child, I guess, to my mom, and so she spoiled me rotten. And even when I turned in my 20s, she didn't want to let me grow up. It was a fight. It was a fight to be able to do things for myself and learn how to do those things. But I eventually got there, and it makes me kind of proud of my work ethic the way it is now. It took time, but I got there, and I think I'm happy with the person I am now. So that's a good thing. Please excuse my phone. I am a manager, and I kind of have to be on call for things like that. So, but that was Messenger, so I don't really think I have anything to worry about. I also answered a question of how did I feel the first time you saw me after I was born, obviously meaning the boys. And I used the word astonished when talking about Christian, my oldest son, because I was shocked at how much he looked like me. And I was not expecting that at all. I don't know why I wasn't expecting it, but I wasn't. And with Aiden, it was joy, pure joy. Obviously, it was joy with Christian too, but it was, obviously less shock with Aiden. He looked like me and Kate, so, there wasn't as much shock there. But it was also a bit of relief because the labor for Kate was difficult. So there was that to go through. But we, praise the heavens above. We all came out on the other side, and everyone's doing good today. And so that's how I wrapped up, how I felt about them the first time seeing them, astonished for Christian and, joy and relief with Aiden. And the final question was, what if I get homesick? And I answered simply with come home. But, I went on to talk about how there'd always be memories and there'd always be an open door for them. And, how much I love them. And I got emotional when I was talking about that, but it's tough now because, they're both, Christian's a young adult in his early 20s, and he's got his own job, and he's moving towards getting his own place and doing his own thing. And, it's difficult to wrap my head around. And Aiden's just going into college. So, those are hard times for a parent. It's very difficult to let go of your child. And, I already had to do it once with Christian, and now I'm doing it again with Aiden. So, but you have to let them go in order to spread their wings and learn about life and become, obviously in my case, men, but, in anyone's case, the adults that they're going to be. You have to let them go and do their thing. And, it's not always the easiest thing to do, but you have to do it. You have to do it for them as much as for you. So, yeah, it's always hard. It's always hard. I see posts on Facebook all the time with my friends and, their kids going off to college. And, sometimes I message them and send them encouraging messages and just letting them know that, it does get better. It's always hard, but it does get better. And, it's better for them in the long run. You kind of have to remember that. But, yeah, you just have to have faith and let life go where it's going to go, because your kids are never going to trust you if you don't let them live their lives and go the way they're going to go. So, letting go is hard to do, but you have to do it. And at the end of the day, that's what matters. So, that's it. And there you have it. We are at the end of episode 26 of the Rise of Dragons podcast. I guess at the end here, I don't have. I guess I could shout out the same people as last week. I could shout out Christian and Aiden and Abby and Chase and Zach and Vaporish Titan and all of my faithful followers on the live stream. I love them all so dearly. And Abby's birthday just went by, so happy birthday to Abby. I adore her, and she's Aiden's girlfriend, and they're great for each other. And so I definitely appreciate her. But other than that, I really don't have a lot to talk about. I'm very tired. Being a manager is, I talked before about never really wanting to be in that position, but I'm in it now. So, it's tough. I mean, I love it. I definitely love it. I love it more than I thought I was going to love it, but it's very difficult, and there's a lot of stress on my shoulders. But I'm lucky enough to have a good team around me, and I'm trying to build a stronger one. So, and I'm lucky enough to have support too, in my peers, my manager peers, and my boss, and so that's very lucky. And I'm only like a month in, 6 weeks in, whatever it is, and I'm just working hard to get better, so I can be better for everyone around me, including customers. So yeah, it's an exhausting process, but it's slowly but surely coming easier, but it's going to take more time, and my boss has certainly been very, very patient with me, and I appreciate her to no end. And I'm going to get there one of these days. But it's always one thing after another, and there's always fires to put out when you're a manager. So you just have to basically roll with the punches and just get done what you can get done. Because at the end of the day, you're a human being. At the end of the day, you're not a machine. So you got to go home and get some rest and try to put work out of your mind for a little while. June always tells me that. My coworker June, I adore her, and she's been such a major help. But she's always telling me to go home and don't think about this place. But it's very, very hard, especially when you're a manager. You're constantly thinking about how to make things better and what you can do better and things like that. It's just it's difficult on the psyche, especially for someone like me, whose psyche is sometimes fragile, anyways. But it's a work in progress, and I think I'll get there one of these days. But right now, I think I just need to finish up everything I need to do and then get some sleep. But until then, I appreciate you guys so very much. Not just the listeners of the podcast, but my watchers on the YouTube channel, the readers of my books. Without your support, there wouldn't be anything that's going on right now, and it means so much to me. And the YouTube channel is growing day by day, just growing more and more. And I have no words, even as a writer, no words for how much that means to me, and how much I love you guys for that. So as always, I'm gonna keep plugging along and doing everything I possibly can, working my ass off. But again, I love it. I love my full-time job, and I love this job. So it could certainly be a lot worse. I definitely don't have anything to complain about. So once again, thank you so much for listening, for watching, for reading, for everything. So until next week, well, I hope everyone has an amazing week, and I hope everyone's being safe out there, and I hope everyone is spreading love, because it's very important. There's just not enough love in the world. So I hope life is treating you well. Until next week, be well, stay safe, and I will see you back here next week for episode 27 of the Rise of Dragons podcast. Until then, take care, guys.